They have control over it, so
We don't do
you
anything.
drop the gavel and we go.
Should I let him get in here?
You'll figure it out when you drop the gavel.
Good afternoon. Stuart. Good afternoon, Stuart. We do, apparently.
Sorry I'm late. There was traffic jam. They said it was a planning commission.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the October 27th Planning Commission meeting. First item on the agenda tonight is the adoption of our agenda. Has everyone had a chance to review that?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item is the approval of the October 13th minutes, which I believe we have a copy of at our desk in addition to receiving earlier today. Anyone,
Move we approve?
Second.
any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Next, recognition of council members. It's hard to see who is here. Are there any?
Syracuse is,
Okay. Do you wish to speak now, or do you, okay. Any other council members that we've
Kathleen
missed?
Murphy's here as
Kathleen
well.
Murphy. You're going to speak at your item? Okay, great. Okay. So our next item will be the list of items for deferral or withdrawal.
What you doing?
Okay, items for deferral or withdrawal. Item number 3 on page 5 of your agenda, 2016Z011TX001, a request to amend the Metro Code pertaining to the determination of inactivity of a planned unit development. Staff recommendation is to withdraw. Item number 4, 2016Z018TX001, a request to amend the code to delete adult entertainment as a use permitted through overlay within the MUIA zoning district. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 5, 2016S160-001, a request for final plat approval to create 2 lots on property located at 1003 Curdwood Boulevard. Staff recommendation is to defer to the November 10th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. Item 6A on page 6 of your agenda, 2016Z131PR001, a request to rezone from RM4 to RM6 for property located at 1496 Chadwell Drive, and the associated 6B, item 2004P032001, a request to amend a planned unit development for property located at 1497 Chadwell to permit 49 residential units within the overlay. Staff recommendation is to defer to the November 10th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. Item number 10, 2016 SP 074001, a request to rezone from CS to SP zoning on property located at 677 Vernon Avenue to permit up to 243 residential units and up to 4,510 square feet of commercial uses. Staff recommendation is to defer to the November 10th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. Item number 12 on page 7 of your agenda, 2014 UD 001006, a request for a modification of the Clayton Avenue UDO. Staff recommendation is to withdraw. Item number 13, 2015 Z088PR001, a request to rezone from R15 to CS zoning for property located at 1360 Pleasant Hill Road. Staff recommendation is to defer indefinitely. Item number 18, 2016 Z119PR001, on page 8 of your agenda, a request to rezone from SP to R6A zoning for various properties located along Cleveland Street and North 2nd Street. Staff recommendation is to defer to the November 17th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting. And item number 23, 2016 SP 075001 on page 9 of your agenda, a request to rezone from RS10 to SP zoning on property located at 1822 River Drive to permit 2 residential units and staff recommendation is to defer to the November 10th, 2016 Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, so just to recap, items for deferral, withdrawal, item 3, 4, 5, 6A, 6B, 10, 12, 13, 18, and 23.
Correct.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to,
Motion to defer those items.
Second.
Or withdrawal.
or withdrawal? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next is the consent agenda.
Okay, as legal notice, as information for our audience, if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Planning Commission today, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of cert with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Planning Commission's decision. To ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met, please be advised that you should contact independent legal counsel. For items on consent, notice to the public. Items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. Items on consent. Item number 7, 85P003 on page 6 of your agenda, the Brentwood Commons HCA PUD. It's a request to revise a preliminary plan for a portion of the PUD on property located on American General Way to permit an office development. Staff recommendation is to remove with conditions, and I note Commissioner Blackshear recuses herself from this item. Item number 8 on page 6 of your agenda, 2016 Z106PR001, a request to rezone from R20 to RS20 zoning for various properties located on Woodlawn Drive, Lynbrook Road, and Bowling Avenue, and staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 9, 2015 SP 028003, a request to amend the specific plan on property located at 1132 Tulip Road, Rove, to delete condition 9C and replace it with a condition prohibiting EIFS and vinyl siding only on the front facade. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions and disapprove without all conditions. Item number 14, on page 7 of your agenda, 2016 DTC 003001, a request for a modification of overall building height on property located at 230 4th Avenue North to permit the expansion of his office building to become a hotel. Staff recommendation is to approve with conditions. Item number 15, 2016 S003HM001, a request to move a house from 2821 Vol Lane to 1227 Old Hickory Boulevard, and staff recommendation is to approve. Item number 16 on page 7 of your agenda, 2016 Z117PR001, a request to rezone from CS and RS5 to MULA for various properties along Glen Rose Avenue. And staff recommendation is to approve, and I would like to note that Commissioner Blackshear is recusing herself on that item. Item 19, 2016 Z121PR001 on page 8 of your agenda, a request to rezone from CL to MUNA zoning on property located at 2214 Gaines Street, and staff recommendation is to approve. Item 20, 2016 Z123PR001, a request to apply contextual overlay on various properties located south of Richards Road, and staff recommendation is to approve. And item 21, 2016 Z130PR001, a request to rezone from RM20 to R6 and R8 zoning for various properties located along Marlin Avenue and Linmar Avenue. Staff recommendation is to approve. Under other business on page 9 of your agenda, item 24, a rule change to the rules and procedures of the Metropolitan Planning Commission related to MDHA pilot agreements, and item 28, accept the director's report and approve administrative items.
Number 7? Okay.
And me from 14.
Okay. Okay. So, items on the consent agenda. Items 7, 8, 9, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 24, 28.
With the exception that 17 is not on the consent. I think
17.
all the rest are correct.
Okay,
And there were 2 added recusals.
yes. Lillian on,
Lillian Blackshear for 14 and Jeff Haynes on 7.
okay. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Thank
Aye.
you. Okay, so the items we will be hearing today, oh,
Wait, if we could
Kathleen.
revisit Councilor Murphy.
Thank you. I was just going to withdraw case number 2016-Z107-PR001.
Okay, which is our item 22, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Do we have to have a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
So move.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so 1, 2A, and 2B. Number 11 and number 17?
That's it.
Okay.
10 and 13?
10 and 13 were on the,
10 and 13
Deferral and
on the deferral withdrawal. So if you're here over any items other than 1, 2A, 2B, 11, or 17, they've been taken care of either in the consent or withdrawal and deferral motions.
okay. So item number 1, should we have a discussion? We'll go ahead and hear the staff report, and then we'll talk about the public hearing. Okay, Carrie?
Item number 1 on your agenda is a text amendment for telecommunications facilities. You did hear this item at your last meeting, and we've made some changes. The first change that we made was to the definition of telecommunications facility. You heard last time that we had intended to be inclusive of all telecommunications, and we believe that we've done that now by adjusting the definition as shown on your screen. This would also delete telephone service and radio TV satellite tower as separate uses and include them as well within telecommunications facilities. And this would add telecommunications facilities as a PC use in all districts. We became aware of the need for this ordinance with the advent of small cells in the right-of-way. It's important to note that one company already has a franchise agreement to put small cells in the right-of-way, and I'll show some photos of that in a few minutes. But that there are pending franchise agreements before the Metro Council as well for additional franchise agreements. Having all of those franchise agreements could result in additional poles within the right-of-way, and Metro felt the need to prioritize co-locating on existing poles within the right-of-way instead of allowing the proliferation of additional structures. There are several federal statutes and FCC guidance that we have to work within. Those have limitations on what we can review for certain applications and when we can deny certain applications, as well as timelines for when we have to approve or deny certain applications. This shows several photos of various telecommunication structures with the antennas and the electronics and radio remote units labeled, as well as the poles that you see here are examples of small cells within Nashville's right-of-way. And so what we have here are self-contained poles where all of the antennas and electronics are within the pole, but they are also adjacent or next to existing alternative structures that could have been consolidated with the small cell infrastructure. Here again is another example of a self-contained pole with the electronics hidden and the alternative structures. I will note for this franchisee, when they came to Metro the first time and asked about adding to some of Metro's infrastructure, they were directed to put up their own poles. And so once Metro realized the implications of that, is when we took a second look at our policy and drafted the ordinance to prioritize co-location. This is an example of small cell ground equipment, not within Metro, but an example of the kinds of additional equipment that could be put within the right-of-way, as well as an example of rooftop antenna installation for a macro site. And this is just some streetscape examples of how we at the planning department and within Metro work hard to consolidate all of our streetscape elements into functional streetscapes for pedestrians. Since the last planning commission meeting, we have had 2 additional meetings, lengthy meetings, one on the 18th and one on the 19th, as well as we took written comments and reviewed written comments before publishing the staff report. So what this process would do, right now there is no zoning review for telecommunications within the right-of-way. This would require zoning and building permits, as well as have application requirements and authorize the fees through a separate council resolution. But this ordinance would allow additional consultant fees when ITS needed technological assistance from a consultant. However, at the request of the stakeholders, we have added a maximum to the ordinance of what that consultant fee could be. We've also required review from planning in our design-based districts, the Historic Zoning Commission, in historic districts, MDHA and redevelopment districts, and ITS for public safety issues with interference. However, the Historic Zoning Commission has opted not to review permits that are within the right-of-way, so they would only be reviewing permits that are on private property. The requirements of the ordinance support co-location. First, on eligible support structures. We talked last time about eligible support structures and how those can be extended under the FCC regulations. So when we have a maximum height of 30 feet, there is the possibility for an automatic 10-foot extension of that later that Metro can't deny. And so using eligible support structures first consolidates everything to a structure that already has telecommunications, and then alternative structures within the right-of-way would be those that don't have telecommunications on them but are present, like streetlights or traffic poles or MTA shelters, anything that's present there. It would also require removal of abandoned telecommunication facilities, either when new facilities are going up. So if an antenna breaks or something like that, that it has to come down as you're replacing it, or if you abandon it for 12 months, then it needs to be taken down as well. There are standards outside of the public right-of-way. Some of these haven't changed for towers that are there now, requiring landscape buffers, requiring substantial changes to have stealth elements so that to minimize the visual impact, and to include notification, not just for the districts that are currently require notification to the council member in the zoning code, but also adding historic districts. We have modified the standards within the public right-of-way. As we talked about last time, this ordinance would prohibit new structures within the sidewalk and would require structures that are consolidating telecommunications to be relocated out of the sidewalk when they meet a substantial change. There would be no new support structure within 500 feet of an existing support structure. And I want to note that this is not a measurement from telecommunication facility to telecommunication facility. There's the ability to put antennas or small cells or conduit or whatever you need to add on any structure that's within the right-of-way now. It's just a measurement from an existing telecommunication structure to a new structure. Requiring underground of transmission equipment, excluding antennas, is what we talked about last time. When we heard from a meeting that we had specifically with engineers that they needed some additional equipment close to the antennas for several technology-based reasons. And so we've excluded those from the undergrounding requirement as well. There was some confusion over the height limit, whether the height was for the support structure or the support structure from plus the antenna. And so we've clarified that to say that the maximum height, instead of 30 feet, and a question of whether the antenna is included and not knowing how tall that antenna would be, to just say a maximum height of 35 feet, which includes all elements, the support structure and the antenna and anything else you need to attach to it. We have proposed the changes that we talked about last time as far as making sure there was no separate process for wireless versus non-wireless. We also took a look at the volumetrics, as they're calling it, or the sizes of the small cell antenna and associated infrastructure. We did increase the antenna size and have an exception for stealth, with the idea being that if you're working with Metro on a stealth design, if it's included all within the element, then we don't necessarily care what the volume is. So you see here 2 examples of stealth. One that's a sign, it could be a sign or could be a neighborhood marker or something like that, as well as, in this case, a sign on private property that's actually a small cell antenna and associated electronics. These are 2 additional examples of how streetlights could be stealth with small cell. Here you see sort of the antenna elements where they could be, but they could have electronics within the rest of the pole as well. So staff recommendation is to approve with the amendments that were in your staff report, but including an amendment to change the measurements of, one of the measurements of maximum size of antenna for a small cell facility from 14 inches in width to 16 inches in diameter. We did work with the industry on the amendments and heard their concerns. We had one who has a model of antenna that they use that wouldn't fit the 14 inches, but would fit 16 inches. And so since they were so close, we felt it was appropriate to propose that amendment tonight. And again, the purpose of this ordinance is to provide comprehensive review within and outside of the right-of-way with respect to location and design elements, and with the goal of maintaining aesthetic standards and pedestrian functionality, but also encouraging smart city or 5G infrastructure expansion.
Thank you, Carrie. So as we all remember, we talked about this one at length 2 weeks ago and declared at the end of it that the public hearing had been closed. As you can hear from Carrie, there's been a number of meetings since our last Planning Commission meeting, and I think they've taken into account a lot of what we've heard from the industry representatives. But it's up to the commission as to whether or not we want to reopen the public hearing. I don't believe there's been a request for us to do so, but if we feel like there would be additional information gained from hearing from those in the audience around this item, that's a decision that we can make. Stuart.
I am probably the only one on the commission that hasn't fully followed all of the language and terminology of the various letters from lawyers and staff, but I really probably there's a point or two I'm not totally sure of, and we do have sort of conflicting interpretations from lawyers, which may be beyond our ability to deal with. But as much as I hate to say it, this is an important issue. We have people here with points of view, not all of whom had the resources to perhaps send things earlier for us to read. I think we should reopen it.
Others? Okay. Any other discussion?
If I may, we've had no requests for anyone to speak,
Okay.
so the reopening would be
nobody's here.
just to ask questions, I guess. Sure. Okay.
Or
Okay.
we could see if anybody was here under the impression they might be able to speak.
Sure.
Just out of an abundance of generosity. Maybe nobody cares to speak except if there's a specific question. I'm fine with that, too.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to reopen the public hearing. All in favor?
All right.
Okay. So we will reopen. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor of the proposed legislation? Anyone here prepared to speak in opposition? Please state your name and,
Thank you. Jim Murphy with the Bradley Farm, 1600 Division Street, Nashville, 37203. I didn't submit a request to speak since the public hearing was closed, so that's why I didn't put one in, but I appreciate the opportunity. Really, the only thing I want to talk about is, right now, one of the requirements that is problematic is the requirement that if we want to attach up to an existing pole in the sidewalk, that pole has to be moved out of the sidewalk before it can be attached to. And that seems to be counterproductive to what you're trying to achieve, which is don't put new structures in the right-of-way. So I think that is one area that we think this ordinance still isn't right on. It really, we might not be able to move a pole in the right-of-way. For example, if it's an AT&T pole, AT&T might not want that pole to be moved. So that basically, if we had to move the pole out of the sidewalk, that's probably prohibiting us to use that pole, which is, again, not what you want. You've told us you want us to locate on existing structures. The other issue is streetlights. If we move the streetlights might not provide the lighting that are needed. If we could locate on traffic signal arms, again, we can't move the traffic signal arms. So if they're in the sidewalk under the way this ordinance is currently drafted, we can't use those structures unless we relocate them. And we think that is a very counterproductive. It doesn't help you achieve what you are trying to achieve. So we would request that that language be deleted. We can understand no new poles in the sidewalk. That makes sense. But if the pole is already there, it's not a new obstruction, and putting an antenna on top of it is not going to make it any worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in opposition? Okay, then we'll go ahead and declare the public hearing closed. No? And Stuart, would you like to open it up?
Yeah, I would like to talk about that issue of sidewalks and ask our staff to go over again the part of the report dealing with sidewalks that was early in your presentation and address Mr. Murphy's concerns, or how we look at those concerns.
If the, that's, if, is the microphone?
No, but you should be.
Kind of
It goes on when you start talking.
If the support structure has telecommunications facilities on it already, which also includes wire or cable or conduit, they actually we cannot require them to move the pole unless they are affecting a substantial change, which would be above the 10-foot requirement, and that is how the ordinance is written. However, if they are attaching to a structure that doesn't already have telecommunications on it, then they would be required to move it outside of the right-of-way. The idea that they're adding to the pole and enhancing it, in some cases probably replacing it, in our opinion, means that they need to eliminate the pedestrian obstruction.
Well, the part of town I live in, actually, thanks to the current and the previous council member, has a lot of sidewalks. This is after my time as other more effective council members, but many times there's poles in the middle of the sidewalk, and it drives people crazy. There are lots of reasons not to have them, so I can understand our staff's desire to get rid of everything we can. Mr. Murphy makes a legal argument about that, which may not be something that we need to address at this level, but I wanted to see if there were a response to that in terms of state law.
Sure. I assume that you're referring to the argument that Mr. Murphy made in his letter to the commission with regard to discrimination. Yeah. So he refers to this particular provision, which is within the ordinance. It's section 3(5)(a), and it talks about, just as Carrie said, you're not required to move it out of the sidewalk unless it meets this definition of substantial change, which comes from the FCC guidance, and which really is pretty substantial. So most changes are probably not going to trigger that requirement. But having said that, the fact that we now have tweaked the telecommunications facility definition so that it covers all telecom providers, regardless of what technology they use for their infrastructure, regardless of whether that's fiber or whether that's coaxial cable or copper wire. Now, that covers them as well. So there's no discrimination amongst this telecom providers, which was his previous argument at the last meeting. I think he has, if I understand it correctly, and I don't mean to mischaracterize him, expanded that argument to say, yes, but there is still a distinction between the way all telecoms are treated and other utilities are treated. He's nodding, so I think I got it right. At any rate, I think our response to that would be that as far as like water and gas is concerned, pretty much that's going to be underground, so it's not going to be an issue. But as far as what's attached on a power distribution pole, it probably is going to be telecom. Communications is really the only thing that seeks to attach on those types of poles at this point in time. And so, I think if there were to be any other future technology that were to attach to such poles, that we would, when that occurs in future, regulate that as well and add that into this, because we would have very much the same motivation to do that we have here. As for the electric distribution itself, NES has some charter provisions regarding their use of public rights of way, and I think in the absence of one of those substantial changes, which we probably wouldn't have for just one of their own poles for their own use, we wouldn't make them move it. And it's really when you have that substantial change that is so much more obtrusive, so much larger and more of an obstruction in the public right of way, that obligation would be triggered.
I think I understand that, and it's complicated and hard for us to make decisions on competing arguments kind of here, but assuming this goes on to the council, and it will, one way or the other, with the recommendation one way or the other, if there is any way the proposed ordinance could be strengthened by being definite about some of that, or more definite than it is, maybe we've done all we can do, but that's just a suggestion, to make it as clear as possible what the various rights are and obligations are.
I mean, I think that we are pretty definite by using the defined term substantial change, which has lengthy definition. So if you read it in the context of that definition, I feel like that is pretty detailed, actually.
So it's not just lay people saying, well, that didn't seem substantial to me. It's kind of further defined. 7 part, right there. I read that. I really did. Okay, thank you. This is very helpful.
Can you clarify just, I guess, for a layperson, so the argument of a street light, so that, because that's where I was stuck, thinking about having to move a street light from, where it is now to 5 feet back off the street. But that, you're saying that's not a situation we would encounter?
It could be if it was within the pedestrian walkway or pathway of the sidewalk, it would have to be moved. And the ordinance provides that it would be located within the grass strip or green zone, which is provided for in the major and collector street plan, which is basically the area of the sidewalk that's closest to the curb.
Okay.
And so in an area where you don't have a grass strip or where you don't have even tree wells in that area, but it is the area where utilities are intended to be, as well as, benches, newspaper, cans, those kinds of things. So
Okay.
it's only if it's within the pedestrian travel.
So we're not going to have a situation where you've got a light pole suddenly 5 feet across the sidewalk. Got it. Okay. Council lady?
Thank you. I have several questions. Just to go back to the green zone for just a second. So in downtown, that makes perfect sense to me, where you've got 15-foot wide sidewalks, that you've got 2 feet right there next to it that's full of all kinds of things, and things can be moved into that. Or actually, I think a lot of the poles, that's where they are now anyway, so they won't need to be moved because they're already in that, quote, green zone, even when it's not green. In my neighborhood, where some of my sidewalks are 4 feet wide, and they're right up against the curb, and that 2-foot green zone is half of my sidewalk, are we sort of stuck with that there?
I believe so, but what we would be prohibiting is where, for example, if you had a 4 or 5 foot sidewalk, having it right in the middle of the sidewalk.
Which is an improvement. Okay, I'll work with that. That feels like a compromise to me. Okay, I think that was all the questions I had on their suggestions. Okay, we've talked about the discrimination, and from a legal standpoint, we feel like we've addressed that, is what I heard you say in your explanation previously. Okay, that sounds good. When we talk about design guidelines, there was a reference to being told to comply with design guidelines, and are those just the height requirements that we've got there, or is there something else to come that would need to be defined at this point?
Right now, they would be governed by the height requirements, the distance requirements, are in the ordinance now, and the ability to attach to NES poles. The design guidelines would really speak to the replacement of metro infrastructure for things like the streetlights that I showed, maybe having some different options of streetlight replacements in neighborhoods versus downtown versus small scale commercial areas, that type of thing.
And is that something that will be done at some point before the next
We are
person
working
needs to
on
install
that,
that? Okay. That seemed reasonable as well. And then there was a question about the 30-day timeline to get all this taken care of, and there was a reference to having to get everything approved by ordinance by the council, which is a three-vote process. Can you sort of talk through, based on the conversation you and I had, it sounds like that ordinance process really only applies to the initial that evaluation of the franchise as a whole, and then the overall master license agreement, not to every single pole location. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
This is kind of another step of Metro's approach to kind of the overall policy goals that Carrie was touching on in terms of the desire to regulate our right-of-way, but also be welcoming to 5G and smart city development. And so another opportunity that we see along those lines would be to open up metropolitan government-owned assets for attachment by the small cell companies, maybe particularly in a stealth fashion like you saw in some of the pictures. But that way, if we're regulating some aspects of the way that they might be in the public right-of-way, this might give them opportunities to be there in another capacity. And so that will take legislation, as discussed. We'll take an ordinance, 3 readings of council. What we would basically be asking council to do would be to delegate the authority to approve each of those individual license agreements, which they would otherwise have to approve individually, to an administrative approval process.
Okay, so once that first vote is done, then after that, it's a much quicker process.
Assuming council approves it, yes.
Okay, which,
If I could add to that, so that would be for Metro's infrastructure, but until that's done, those who have franchise agreements for use of the public right-of-way most likely also have pole attachment agreements with NES and would have the ability to attach to NES's infrastructure in the interim.
Or any private property.
Yes, or any private property.
Or could seek with Metro through individual approval by ordinance.
okay, so we have options
there's
for moving
process.
that.
There's options in the
process.
meantime.
And it sounds like it can move. Okay, and then moving on to the next group of questions, there was concern about, we had increased the volume from 3 cubic feet to 5 cubic feet. And there was an issue of if that was exactly enough. I understand we're willing to make further small adjustments to make that actually work.
Right, another adjustment, we took the diameter and the height from one of the suggestions, I think, that we got from the stakeholders, and the 5 from another suggestion. And then we got a third suggestion for the 16 inches in diameter, and since they're so close, we felt comfortable recommending
Okay, and
that
that's
here
an
today.
amendment that's already actively in there, which I think is good.
Actually, I think you all would have to adopt that amendment.
Yes, they would, yeah.
As we get to part of that. Okay, so we'll need to adopt that 16 inches. Okay, and then also there was a statement that this would have to go through zoning approval. It will have to go through a council process for the master lease, but by saying this is permitted with conditions, as long as they meet the conditions, then they're good to go, right? So there's not a permit required for each one of those.
Well, there's a permit required, but if they meet the conditions or the standards that are listed as conditions, the permit would be issued.
Okay, without that. I think, let me check one other list. It's a topic near and dear to my heart. We talk about needing to put things underground where we can. Is there anything in here about tree protection, or can they just kill any tree they want you to put it underground? Have we worked through that?
There is nothing to address tree protection, but if we're talking about structures within the sidewalk, within the right-of-way, is where we talked about having to underground facilities, we would be able to coordinate that it's not within a tree well
Okay.
or adjacent to
Okay,
anything.
okay. I think that's important. All right, one more place to check. Okay, and then we talked about landscaping. There was a reference to not knowing where landscaping, how landscaping would be required, but it seems like you've addressed that. Can you?
Yes. The landscaping is required, like it is now in the code, on private property adjacent to residential uses.
Okay, so we're there. Okay. So I feel like a lot of ground has been covered since the last meeting, and based on the concerns that were expressed here, you've pretty satisfactorily answered my questions with regard to the things that they brought up. So I think we've made a lot of good progress, and I feel good about it. I'm done.
Great. Thank you. Good questions. Chairman, would you like?
No comments.
Commissioner Haynes?
No comments.
Commissioner Hagendare? All right. I guess you guys are efficient. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the staff recommendations.
Second.
With the
amendments.
amendment,
With the amendment.
with the proposed amendment. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Yes, I support the motion. I do think it's a good idea when we're given something to have our staff work as much as possible with affected citizens and businesses, and I think we've done a fair amount of that with this, but at some point, we have to recognize the motivation behind this bill and the fact that it can be modified and might continue to be modified at the council level. So I'm prepared to see that go forward, and appreciate everyone's working as hard as they have to minimize the disputes between the different parties.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So we want to give Lillian a minute to get in here, right?
Yeah, we just should get set up and stop her before she gets started.
Okay.
From backstage.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like, actually.
All right, item number 2A.
This is a plan amendment request, a major plan amendment in Green Hills Midtown. The request is to change the policy from urban neighborhood maintenance, which is residential, to urban neighborhood center, a mixture of uses at a neighborhood scale. This plan amendment has been around for a while. It was originally filed in October of 2014 and has been deferred several times. Here you see a zoomed-in picture. We are east of 12th Avenue South and south on Montrose Avenue. Here's a slide of the policies. You'll see a large area of urban neighborhood maintenance policy. That's the single-family neighborhood. And mixed-use neighborhood center policy along the 12th South corridor. Staff recommendation is to disapprove. We've studied this policy numerous times over the years and have carried forward residential policy. With the 2005 Green Hills Community Plan update, 2008, detailed work was done with the 12 South area on a detailed neighborhood design plan. 2013 analysis during the Nashville Next process. 2014 analysis when this plan amendment request was filed. And 2015 with the adoption of Nashville Next, including an update of the Green Hills Midtown Community Plan. At that time, staff continues to be concerned about commercial encroachment into the residential area. We've heard over and over from 12 South community members that they value the single-family residential and that they already allow for a lot of mix of uses along the 12 South corridor, and so they would like to preserve single-family residential uses interior. Okay, item 2B is the associated rezoning case. This is a request to rezone to permit a mixed-use development. Staff recommendation is to disapprove the request. A bit of history, as Anita mentioned, both the plan amendment and the rezoning have been around for some time. After the deferral at February 2015, it was deferred indefinitely. They did reactivate the case in September, and that's where we are now. The current zoning of the property is R8, which is residential 1 and 2 family. The current policy is urban neighborhood maintenance, and the proposed policy is urban neighborhood center, as Anita mentioned. The urban neighborhood policy, again, is a residential-only policy, and urban neighborhood center allows for a mixture of small residential or small non-commercial uses on a neighborhood scale. The proposed plan adds office uses as a use permitted within the existing structures. It also adds commercial parking to the rear of the two existing structures. All access is from the alley, and a landscape buffer is proposed along the eastern boundary of the property to the adjacent residential properties. The existing structures are proposed to remain. As a bit of history to this area and rezonings in this area, there was a rezoning in 2004, which is the area that is outlined in the yellow. Staff recommended disapproval of the two easternmost properties, the ones that are shaded in yellow. Staff felt that that was infringing too far into the neighborhood at that time. The entire rezoning was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. The two properties that are in question are outlined in red on this map. Staff recommends disapproval of the request. Staff is also recommending disapproval of the policy change. The proposed uses are inconsistent with the existing neighborhood maintenance policy, and that is a residential-only policy. Additionally, it's inappropriate to expand the non-residential uses further into the residential area. So again, in summary, staff recommends disapproval.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the public hearing. If there's anyone here, applicant. Jumped ahead of myself, sorry. You'll have 10 minutes, and you can hold 2 back for rebuttal.
Anita.
My name's Jay Fulmer with Fulmer Engineering. I'm here to ask you to join Councilman Sledge and the immediate neighbors, and you can see the immediate neighbors on this chart that are in support of our project, for you to also support our project. Councilman Sledge sent out an email earlier today. I'm hoping you all have a copy of it. If you don't, then we'll be happy to have somebody read it to you. But our project is to have the two existing structures on this site remain. It is to add office as an approved use. It is to restore these structures. It is to prohibit the addition or expansion of these structures. It is not to include retail, and actually retail is prohibited. And the size of these structures are not great, so the office use should be fairly low impact. Demolition of these structures is prohibited, as I said, and in the event that something happened to them, we have to reconstruct them in the same theme and size. The project includes increased landscaping above and beyond the zoning ordinance requirements. It'll eliminate the driveways to Montrose, which will then introduce 2 more parking spaces on the street. And it also includes parking in the rear that is all off the alley. And this project, it should be noted, is not in the conservation overlay for the area. However, as Councilman Sledge points out in his letter to you, the restrictions in our SP go above and beyond that of the conservation overlay. So please join us in support of this project and help us move forward. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Andy Howell. In the past 15 years, my brothers and I have purchased and restored the old Becker's Bakery building, added an outdoor furniture store, helped develop a successful barbecue restaurant and beer garden, identified and leased space for a dentist office, painted the original I Believe in Nashville mural on the side of our building, developed a new property for Reese Witherspoon's clothing store, constructed 4 moderately priced apartment residences, and reestablished a bakery in the 12 South neighborhood. Additionally, we have purchased the homes at 1109 and 1111 Montrose Avenue. We like to think we are on the ground every day solving problems, generating enthusiasm, and creating new opportunity in the 12 South neighborhood. After being approached by outside developers concerning the houses on Montrose, we began to look for a financially viable way for us to keep and restore the 2 homes in the proposed SP. Like we have done with every project we've worked on in the neighborhood, we've reached out to our neighbors on Montrose and Halcyon, the neighborhood associations, Sunnyside and 12 South, members of the Metro Council, and other community leaders. With these folks' input in mind, we developed the proposed SP. Our proposal will save and restore the existing houses, increase street parking on Montrose, create additional off-street parking, and continue our efforts to maintain the contextual simplicity of our neighborhood. We have received 360-degree support from our neighbors on Montrose and Halcyon, our councilperson, and anyone that we have spoken to in a leadership position, all of which has given us valuable input and ideas reflected in the proposed SP. On a personal note, in August, my niece Katie strolled her newborn baby girl down the hill from Ashwood Avenue to see me and show her around 12 South. Charlotte Elizabeth Fayard represented the 6th generation of our family to live, work, and play in 12 South. Obviously, we took her first selfie at the I Believe in Nashville mural. We're proud of both our efforts and our legacy in 12 South. We appreciate your consideration and respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. You'll have 2 minutes left for rebuttal. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the project? Please approach, come on up. If you guys can line up, you'll have 2 minutes, and please begin by stating your name and address.
Bobby Johnson, 1009 Houston Avenue in Nashville, about a block and a half from the area we're speaking of. I'm also the president of Sunnyside Community Organization, which I have been for the last 20 years, and I live in the neighborhood over 30 years. When the SP plan first came in existence, I think our councilman was running grill during that time, and we had a lot of discussion on the SP plan. The SP plan to me is that we approve what's going to be taking place on that lot of space prior to approving the plan. My concern in the years that we are concerned is the development in the community where the investors coming in and building these, they call them duplex, but they don't, to me, they don't fit the neighborhood because when I first moved there, everything is basically the same, but now you drive down the street and how everything looks, and then you see something big. But if they have already been approached on these two lots, what will happen if they turn around and sell them at residential and build 4 units on there like they're doing on 12th Avenue now? So me with the SP plan and what they are planning on doing, and I know the house because they've been in the neighborhood so long, and they are not coming in and doing a big change. So we had a meeting with Sunnyside, and as a group, we decided that we're going to support this project because it does not make a drastic change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Cynthia Lucas, and my office is at 12th Avenue South at 2909. I've been there for over 16 years, and my office partner's been there for over 18 years. Ironically, we've had office space there, and people still don't know we're there in terms of increasing a lot of density right there. The Howes have shown decades of commitment and concern to the 12 South area and preservation causes more broadly. I think an SP approval would preserve the existing structures and, to my understanding, solidifies a less dense use than what could be built without even a rezoning. An office space in the area seems to aid the goal of more live-work community development. And an SP survives even if the Howes sell or move out of the office space, because my understanding is they plan to occupy some of the space. So the use could not be changed without another rezoning, so it's not a way of sneaking in retail or something else. And when I think about it, if over on Kirkwood and Franklin, there's 3 houses, structures, that one is Andante Day Spa that's been there for over 10 years, a dentist office that's been there over 10 years, and the third one currently is Delivery Dudes. And they've been there for over 10 years, and they haven't caused more and more creep, and they're right behind that Shell station into the residential. So we hope that this is approved because we think it is good for the community and sticks with the character of the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all.
Hi.
My name's Abby Kelleher. My husband, Bart, and I live we have one house in between us and the two properties that are being discussed here. We've lived there for 12 years. We are in support of this project. It's going to help with the parking issues along our street that we've been subject to recently with all the new development of the merchants. And it'll help beautify the street as well. And we also think that by closing off the driveways, it'll also make the sidewalks safer. We've got 3 young boys that play up and down the sidewalk. We know the Howells. We've known them for a long time. They're good neighbors, and they plan to do good things, and they have done good things. So we are fully in support of this. I have personally spoken with all of the neighbors on our block that will be most affected by this. They are all in support of this project. In fact, Will Alexander, whose property backs up to this project, he was here. He had to go to a birthday party for his little boy, but he was here in support of the project too. So we're hoping that you guys will support the house and let this happen. Thank you.
Anybody else speaking in support? Okay. Anyone here speaking in opposition to the project? Please come up, line up in the middle, and you guys can decide who goes first. You'll have 2 minutes, and again, state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Claire Armbruster, and I live on Montrose Avenue at 1004. My husband, Jeff Kuntz, and I own the property there. And I'm against the proposal because I feel that it'll set a precedent in the neighborhood and cause more encroachment into the residential area. While I respect what the Howells have done in the neighborhood and the fact that they've discussed this with everyone and had neighborhood meetings has been really great, but I just really don't want to see this zoned as a commercial property. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Ken Winter on Paris Avenue, 1021. I applaud the Howells, the 4 generations, for doing everything Andy said. I would characterize Nashville Next in 3 words: inclusion and complete neighborhoods. Social and economic exclusion, inequality, if you will, are at crisis levels in the entire country. New urbanism has philosophical and economic design answers for a lot of this. On the other hand, the 12th Avenue mixed-use district is basically a leisure time and discretionary income experience. There are great differences. Andy's projects are neighborhood-sized, as the DNDP says, and many others are. Neither the Howells, nor the councilman, nor the 12th South Neighborhood Association has spoken about any of this, has put any of this project in the context of our plans, from the 1997 12th Avenue plan, which Andy's father helped write, to Nashville Next, and to the DNDP, and to the 2005 Nashville Plan of Nashville. The idea that this is not a precedent doesn't hold water at all. The fact that Andy has the united support of all the East Side 12th Avenue landlords shows that they're quite interested in the outcome of this. The main gentrification in this neighborhood comes from, the outstanding gentrification comes from 3 businesses at the corner of Clayton and, never mind.
My name is Jim Stringer. I live at 1101 Halcyon Avenue. First thing I would like to say is my wife and I have been there since 2008. None of these commercial things that were talked about were there when we moved in. I think that's important because it's a cart and a horse thing. I think the Howells have done a great job for what they've done. But the residential has driven the commercial, not the other way around. The staff has recommended that this be defeated for a lot of good reasons. And if you want proof of the fact that what can happen with encroachment, just walk around Berry Hill. Take a look. That's about as much encroachment as you can get. So we would hope that you would oppose this plan to rezone it, this special purpose rezoning. And let's talk about what the Howells can do right now with that property as it is. Mr. Johnson spoke about the fact that they could put 4 units on that. R8 says that you got to have 8,000 square feet per lot in order to build a duplex. They don't have 8,000 square feet per lot. They've got 7,500 square feet per lot, according to their own plan. So right there, they can build single-family residential units on each lot, not 4, 2 in total. I think that's an important thing to remember. Now, and I will not try, because 2 minutes goes by so fast, I would just like to say that you're not under any compunction, nor is the city, to approve this again. Let me just
Finish your thought.
Okay, thank you. You do not have to diminish the residential neighborhoods of this city just because somebody wants, a small group of people want to have an economic advantage. I'll only ask for fairness. We came in here tonight, and we should leave with the same thing we came with.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else speaking in opposition? Okay, if not, I'll declare the public hearing closed and, oh, I'm out of practice today. Would you guys like to use your remaining 2 minutes? The applicant?
We just want to thank you for your time and attention to this. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Okay.
Thank you for your support.
Now I will declare the public hearing closed. And I'll have to start on this side. Commissioner McLean?
Okay. One question of the applicant, the board that they've got up there with the blue lines around the lots, can you explain, would you mind coming back up to your...
We wanted to present, the site is these two, and everybody contiguous to us that we received a letter of support from. We added, Will was here earlier and he left, so we added his property later after this was made. But we had received letters, and those letters should be in your packet. So we just wanted to demonstrate that we had basically a 360 ring of everybody that touches the property that's in support.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the staff's right. I'm certainly for property rights and being a developer, want to do all that we can, but when you move that line that's been established by along 12th, I think when you start encroaching on the other properties, that leaves us open to go all the way down the street, and I don't think it's the planning that we want to see. So.
Okay. Commissioner Haynes?
I struggle with this. I have a lot of respect for the Howells and what they've done, both in 12 South and in the city, and yet I think there are areas very close by that can provide adequate office space within a short drive, and I'm not sure we need to begin the encroachment. So I think I'm going to support staff's recommendation.
Commissioner Hagendare?
I don't have any, I have no questions. I think we can learn from our past, not listening to staff's recommendation on some of these things, as it was pointed out in the presentation. There was something previously that we approved, and they recommended we disapprove, and now we have another parcel encroaching further into the neighborhood. I think the detailed design plan for the neighborhood is clear. The Nashville Next policy is clear, and if we continue to hack at Nashville Next, then what use is it to even have it as a guiding document? So I'm going to support the staff's recommendation at this point.
Council Lady Allen.
Thank you. I agree. It's hard to look at all the good things that have been said and not be swayed by those. I appreciate the willingness to close the curb cuts. I think the preservation of the home is appealing, and certainly the Howells have done amazing things in the area that have been very beneficial. That being said, I've been involved in numerous discussions about the future development of 12 South and know how much work and thought and community involvement went into the detailed neighborhood design plan and the community plan reviews. And it seems like 4 different times the community has spoken and said that, this is where the line needs to be. I will say the other side of the street has a very nice alley that makes a very clear line, and where the commercial stops and where the residential starts. And on this side, it's not that clear. And I think there's a legitimate concern of if you start putting warts in it, then it could grow without any specific thought or pattern guiding it. And we have the thought and pattern, which is the detailed neighborhood design plan and the Nashville Next. So that being said, I appreciate the thought that's gone into this, but I do feel like the concerns about precedent setting and encroachment into the neighborhood are valid.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Blackshear?
Well, really nothing too much more to add. I do respect the effort put into the plan. I think that obviously there's a lot of good intentions behind it. When you look at the plan, at first blush, to me, it looked inappropriate to be on that block and on that street. I don't like the idea of the commercial encroaching into the residential areas. You see it a lot in East Nashville. We have plans that come before us, and I really don't like it then, and I don't like it now. So I think I'll support staff's recommendation.
Okay. Commissioner Clifton.
I know it's been said before, but it's so true that I'm going to say it too. This family is a legendary family in terms of community service and keeping their word. Of course, we're not rezoning for a family. We're rezoning in a system where they have the right to sell it next week or divide it when there's an heir situation, and we cannot make policy based on something like that as much as I respect the applicants. If our urban development shows us anything much, it shows us that once you start traveling down a block, you go all the way down before you're through. So I admire a lot of people on both sides of this issue, and we did get a lot of letters from people on both sides. But our staff has, I think, analyzed this appropriately, and I would, when you're ready, I would move that we approve staff recommendation and disapprove.
Okay. Well, I believe that we are ready, but we do need to vote on these separately. So do I have a motion to approve staff recommendation on item 2A?
So moved.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and then item 2B. Motion. Okay.
Second.
And second? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay. So we are on item 11.
Well, he had stated it as both, but.
Yeah, okay. Right. We'll go with that. You're going to need it.
It's always best to be.
Right, exactly, that's what I was trying to think through.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is it this one?
Okay. Item number 11 is a periodic review. This is a request of a periodic review of a planned unit development. Staff recommendation is to find the PUD inactive and recommend that council cancel the PUD and rezone the properties to RS20. The existing zoning for the property is OR20 with a PUD overlay. The planned unit development that is on the property, the planned unit development that was on the property was approved in 1983. Staff has not been able to locate a plan. There is no plan existing for the PUD. The enacting ordinance for the plan that was adopted in 1983 did not contain any information in regards to permitted density or site plan. It simply stated that the property was rezoned to allow the construction of a residential time-sharing facility to complement the existing facilities in the area. In cases where there's no plan for a PUD, then any proposed development within the planned unit development must go back to council. It's treated as an amendment. The section 174120H of the zoning code outlines the Planning Commission's role in regards to PUD inactivity reviews. The Planning Commission role is that the Planning Commission determines whether the PUD is active or inactive. If it's found active, no further action is required. If found to be inactive, then the Planning Commission must recommend further action to the council, and those action would be in the form of either maintaining, amending, or canceling the existing PUD. It may also be necessary, depending on the previous action, for the Planning Commission to recommend a rezoning of the base zone as well. The Planning Commission is charged by the zoning ordinance to make findings on 3 items. To determine if a PUD is inactive, the Planning Commission has to establish the following 3 things. The first is whether or not 6 or more years have elapsed since council approval of any plans for the property. The PUD was approved in 1983, and no further action has been taken by council since that time. Second, the Planning Commission must determine whether or not any on-site construction has begun in regards to development of the planned unit development. No construction has begun on-site to develop the approved plan. Third, Planning Commission has to make a finding in regards to whether or not right-of-way has been acquired or construction of off-site improvements have taken place. No off-site improvements have taken place in regards to this PUD. The Commission may also take into consideration the aggregate of actions, if any, taken by the owner of the planned unit development within the prior 12 months from the time of the request to develop the portion of the PUD under review. Staff did meet with a property owner within the planned unit development, and the owner presented a preliminary site plan, but no other information was presented to staff. Again, as a reminder, if the Planning Commission votes to find the PUD inactive, then the Planning Commission must also recommend an action to council to either maintain, amend, or cancel the existing PUD. That recommendation is based on the land use policy. So the land use policy for this property is conservation for the entirety of the property. This is a recognition of the environmentally sensitive nature of the property in that portion of it is located within the floodway and the floodplain. This property was completely inundated during the 2010 flood. Intense development is inconsistent with the policy given the environmental constraints. Given this, staff recommends that that Planning Commission find the PUD inactive and also recommend to council to cancel the PUD and rezone the properties to RS20.
So the applicant is the council member?
Hello, everyone. Thank you. This is a PUD that now exists in the new reality of post-2010, May 2010 with the flood. The area was decimated by that flood. And as you heard, this PUD goes back to 1983. So at the request of the neighbors, staff went through this process. And I did meet with the property owner as well. And obviously, I agree with the staff recommendation to cancel the PUD and rezone it. The only question I would have is the RS20 recommendation. The rest of the area is R15. So I want to be as sensitive to the property owner as I can be as far as their ability to develop on the property. I've also offered that I get 3 free rezonings per year. I don't want them to be completely burdened by this action, but the realities are that we cannot do dense development on the river like this. So I would utilize one of my 3 free rezonings to help them with this process. So I thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here speaking in support of the PUD cancellation? If you can line up and give us your name and address, you'll have 2 minutes. Line up. If you've got someone else with
No, we've got
another person in opposition.
I'm Richard Lawler. I live at 2313 Pennington Bend. We've been out there since 1966. Been through 2 floods. The last one was the one that really got our house. This thing in '83 was a huge battle. We lost. They put in the PUD. It was pretty ridiculous to begin with, so it was never done. Taking the PUD off the property is right. The people who own the property now would like to do something with it, obviously. It's a fairly large property. So depending on what stormwater will allow, I think R15 would be appropriate since it's what everyone else has down there. But under the new constraints, that may not be possible. That's not for me to say. But we would have, as president of the Homeowners Association, I don't think anyone out there would object to R15, since that's only fair. And I've got to go pick up my granddaughters.
All right, thank you very much.
Good evening, I'm Victoria May. I live at 2409 Pennington Bend Road, and it is next to Leslie Bills, who couldn't be here but supports the position that this should be a residential lot. Her house is the one that blew up on Pennington Bend. You all saw what the whole area looked like during the flood. The Fairfield Inn is what is on the not riverside of Pennington Bend. So our position, I'm one of the homeowners, and my husband is here, would be that it should be residential. And we are restricted to rebuild only the footprint that we had before 2010. So I'm not even sure that the owners of this property could build on there. It was for sale for $1.5 million on September the 1st. So I'll save some time for rebuttal. Thank you.
Is there anyone else speaking in support? Anybody speaking in opposition to the request?
Hello, my name's Pam Adams, and our mother bought the lot in question in 2003 with the intent, she was 75 at the time, with the intent of us basically taking care of her in her old age. She's from a small town, not used to living on her own. So that's what the intent was, and that's why the original zoning was important. We understand that it's fine to get rid of the old PUD. It doesn't even make sense. But we would like the opportunity to have the time to show you. We've been working, we met with Eric, I forgot his last name, but Nashville Next, for the program for policemen, teachers, and firemen.
Eric Cole.
Yes, thank you. We think that's wonderful to support our teachers, firemen, and policemen, and I think that would be an asset to the neighborhood. That's why this particular zoning, we haven't had time to go through all of it and know all the details about it because it's still brand new and in planning, but we would like the time to be able to put a plan together, and we've met with engineers, and that's why we gave you the book, so you can see that we have been working on this. We would appreciate the time very much, and also, if you're aware, I'm sure you are, there's a new FEMA draft map coming out that will be putting our property mainly in the 500-year floodplain. We met with Tom Palco and Roger Lindsay, and they mentioned that we had the most buildable lot on the river. It is taller and and we have all that in here for you to see. We're just asking that we have a chance. They removed, I know there's traffic concerns, but Metro bought 25 properties, and we feel like that we wouldn't be any higher traffic than there was before the flood. And we've also invested, we have a duplex right next door, and it was flooded, and we put $165,000 in that, and it was just a shell full of snakes. So we have improved the neighborhood, and we're good neighbors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time, as always. Appreciate everyone that's here. The Adamses had asked me to come here. My name is Pete Prosser. I work with Zeitler Realtors. I do quite a bit of development in the city with a lot of different groups. But I would agree and concur. This PUD needs to be canceled. It doesn't warrant in this area at all. It doesn't fit. It's not good design. And given the changes in the city and the policy, Nashville Next, et cetera, I think what they're asking for should be considered by the council for R15. If you look, all the properties down here are zoned R15, just to be consistent with that street. And then to just have an OR20 spot zoning, I'm not sure how that would fit within, the area. Because if you look at them, I believe they're R15. If I'm not mistaken, down here, all their neighbors have R15. So if it was zoned RS20, excuse me, sorry, yes, I see Stuart shaking his head. Yes, sorry, apologize. Just to be consistent, and also then when you want to maintain the streetscape, how do you do that? So I think there's some things here to consider if the applicant is asking if we could consider R15 to stay consistent within policy. I think that makes sense. And, they're just asking for the same thing that their neighbors have. So I would ask that the council consider the R15, as you heard Councilman Syracuse say, if that was something you could do, that I know that they would appreciate that and be consistent with what's going on the street already. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else speaking in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Tony Adams. I live at 1930 Old Murfreesboro Road, Lebanon, Tennessee. My wife and I, she's already spoke, we own this property. I know it was stated earlier there wasn't any copies of the PUD. I have copies. You should have got a white booklet, all of you, that say item 11. The PUD's in there, and then it was modified again in 1985. And then also there's a letter in there about utility availability. It's dated 1990. This is all old stuff, but it's in there. It's in there. And I've met with Tom Palco, and as my wife said, the new 500-year floodplain's coming out in April 2017, and we would like for this just to be deferred, until that time, so we can get a plan together. This kind of blindsided us. I do have a timeline in here, but I don't want to burden you with all that, but it's in here what we have been doing, preparing to try to do something with this property. We'd love to do something with the mayor's program, the workforce housing development. We'd love to do something with that. Thank you.
Councilman, do you have anything? Do you want to?
I don't really have anything further, but I guess I'll listen to everybody's thoughts as far as what the property owners are requesting. But I think at the end of the day, this is not a PUD in the middle of anywhere. This is along the river. So I think that what the staff is recommending at the end of the day is solid, and we need to go forward with inactivating this PUD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Can I ask just a clarifying question? So we have to, everybody seems to be in favor of canceling the PUD, and the issue is around what we go forward with on the rezoning. But can we separate those two?
The rezoning actually has to come back to the Planning Commission as a separate application and then go through the normal process of going back to council for approval. So as with other PUD inactivity reviews, they come back. The rezoning comes back as a separate action, and the cancellation would come back as a separate action as well.
So if we cancel it today, it reverts back to OR 20? And then.
No, today, the recommendation of the Planning Commission today is saying that you need to make a recommendation to council, but it actually has to come back. So the action today would not actually cancel the PUD or rezone the property.
Okay.
The ordinance charges us with making a recommendation to you all to make a recommendation to council. And so then it still has to come back as a separate application and a separate action to cancel and
But
rezone.
the commission can make a recommendation on what they think the appropriate zoning would
should be.
Yes.
Okay, so we don't have to stick with the RS20 if that's,
Correct.
You can make that recommendation in a motion?
Yes, and the same motion regarding whether the PUD should be active or not.
okay. Okay, well, I will open it up for discussion, and Council Lady Allen.
This is easier
You're
than
just at the
other
end.
ones.
Your
I'm
eyes
good
go
on
there.
this one. I mean, it seems like we all pretty much agree on almost everything. It seems that this doesn't meet any of the tests for an active PUD. And so I think canceling the PUD is the appropriate thing to do. And I think because of the issues with the floodplain, the OR20 seems awfully intense for a floodplain or potential floodplain or flood zone. So the suggestion of R15 seems like a good option to me.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Blackshear.
I'd like to ask the staff just to kind of walk us through the rationale of going to RS20 as opposed to R15. I'm assuming you looked at, I guess, various maps. I know they're talking about a new FEMA map coming out. Just can you walk us through how you came to this conclusion and whether you think it'll be smart maybe to wait until a new FEMA map came out, or whether you think that won't make too much of a difference?
We do have, the new draft FEMA map has been out, and we have looked at that and evaluated that, and portions of the property are within the floodway right along the river. And then there's a portion that's within the 100-year floodplain, and then there is a part of the property that is within the 500-year floodplain. And so when looking at and evaluating what may be the most appropriate zoning district, we really looked at the lot sizes and what seemed to be the most appropriate level of development. Of course, that could vary. The smallest lot is around 22,000 square feet, and so we considered an RS20 to be an appropriate development level.
This is, I think, tough. I mean, I see why, obviously, you would not want to have a lower zoning, less intense zoning than everyone around you, but it also seems to make sense to go with a less intense zoning. I'd be, obviously, and clearly, we're all in agreement that the PUD needs to be canceled. But I would be interested to hear the other commissioners, their thoughts on the appropriate zoning.
Commissioner Clifton?
So the process is that, and the law is that we, for a cancellation, we have to vote on the cancellation, and then we as the commission are required by Metro Code to recommend the appropriate zoning. It's not just that the staff has to recommend to us,
Right.
but we must make a decision on that.
Yeah, first decide whether it's active or inactive, and then if
Right.
you've decided that it's inactive, then whether or not to continue the PUD or to recommend a change in the zoning. Whether cancel it and recommend a different type of zone.
Find it inactive.
It is, I understand the staff's recommendation, and it might make a lot of sense, and looking at what's around it. We, for good reason, don't go around canceling PUDs a lot, because you're essentially taking away a right that we have never actually been challenged on, and I think it's legal, but the fact is, one day they had a certain vested right, and the next day they don't. And to me, I'm toying with the idea of, since there's absolutely nobody in the area, and since the councilman has the ultimate say in recommending to his peers, whether it's RS20 or R15, I'm toying with the idea that we might simply go ahead and balancing the different interests and recommend R15, but I'm certainly happy to listen to everyone else. I don't have a motion yet.
Okay. Commissioner Hagendare.
I agree with Commissioner Clifton. I think seems like the appropriate. I mean, I think legally, it's an inactive PUD. We find that, and then our recommendation would be to cancel the PUD and an R15, and then let them hash it out in a democratic process.
Commissioner Haynes?
I don't often agree with Commissioner Clifton. In this particular situation,
I always do.
I'm in agreement with Commissioner.
You note it when you do. I've noticed that.
Rare thing.
Commissioner McLean.
Well, I think it's obvious that the PUD needs to be canceled, and everybody's in agreement to that. I do have a different spin on it. The base zoning is now OR 20, which is more intense than R15. If you downzone to R15, you've taken quite a bit of the property rights away. OR 20 allows office and residential, and in a floodway, they could, if they desired to build a high-rise condominium, or if they decided to build an office building, they could have underground parking in that floodway or in the floodplain, and probably under that scenario, I think that the property rights are more in line with what, before the PUD is canceled, rather than going to R15, which probably would only allow maybe 3 or 4 lots. And so I think the property itself is worth more as a OR 20, and that's the base zoning. So my recommendation would be that we cancel the PUD, but keep the base zoning of OR 20.
I wanted to point out, though, I think there was maybe a misspoken moment when somebody did mention OR meaning RS, because all
No,
of
it says it's present zone OR 20.
Base zoning is OR 20.
Oh, no, I know that, but in the discussion from the folks who spoke to us, they're the only people who expressed views about what they wanted, which we're not bound by, I realize, but some wanted RS and some wanted R15. Nobody actually was speaking on behalf of keeping the base zoning, which doesn't mean...
I understand that.
Okay.
But we're not bound with that, but I'm saying that you're taking, by canceling the PUD, you're taking property rights away, and I think in this case, that the way that our regulations are written, that's appropriate to do that. But when you do that, I would hope that we would be sensitive to the property rights and take it only down to the highest level that we could and not the lowest level. And that OR 20, I think, would give them that shot.
Staff recommendation, though, makes the note that the floodplain issue, I mean, that the base zoning was before the 2010 flood, and that this is a conservation area, and so therefore the base zoning is not currently appropriate anymore for this piece of property. That's what the staff recommendation says. The base zoning is not appropriate given the environmental constraints recognized by the policy that currently overlays this property.
But whether you build a high-rise or whether you build an office building or whether you build a single-family home, they're all subject to the same flooding.
So
my opinion is, as a developer, that OR 20 gets the living area and our office area further up above the floodplain because they can build a concrete structure to have parking underneath.
If we do leave it or go forward with the R15, they would still be restricted in terms of what they could build based on the flood maps. Is that correct?
The zoning would restrict what they could build, and the flood maps would restrict where they could build it.
And how much of it could be built?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that's the same with the OR 20, I guess, as well. I mean, I struggle when
It is, but if you're building a single-family house, you can only raise it up so far. You're not going to build a concrete structure to park your car underneath it. I'm just saying this gives them more leeway as to how they can develop the property. So.
I will tell you that one of the things that, I was on the flood recovery, I was in the flood recovery office, the mayor's office, immediately after the 2010 flood. And to this day, one of my biggest hesitancy in allowing development anywhere near the 100-year floodplain is putting people where they can be in their beds at night when this happens. And I think to Commissioner's point that commercial properties, even when we looked at doing buyouts, were far off of the list rather than residential properties. When we went and looked at what properties we might use our limited funds to purchase, we really didn't look at commercial properties. We looked at residential properties to try and keep people from living and sleeping, quite frankly, in these locations. So just to go along with what the commissioner is saying, that OR 20, and I realize I'm kind of going against what our recommendation is right now, but he makes a very valid point that I just hadn't dawned on me until this moment.
I'm going to make a motion that we make a recommendation to council of PUD, but keep the base zoning as it is. You're not changing the zoning, but you keep the base zoning.
What, we have to do it?
Right, you have to do, whether to at first make a determination about activity,
Okay.
and then we can get to whether the PUD's appropriate or not, or what zoning district you believe is.
So you need separate motions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the first motion's easy. If anybody.
I'll make a motion to council of PUD.
Well, you're making a motion to determine that
The
that
PUD
it's
is
not
inactive.
active.
Right.
Find the PUD inactive.
Inactive, okay.
Right.
All right, so we have a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The next piece is the recommended zoning that we will suggest back to council.
Make a motion that we recommend that the present zoning of RS20 remain.
No, OR 20.
OR20, excuse me. Need my glasses.
I have
Oh, I need a motion, a second, before we can discuss.
Second.
Thank you.
Well, I've just a question first. Where, is there any non-residential zoning anywhere out there? Close? Right next door?
This is the existing zoning map here, R15. This is the property that we're talking about with the PUD. There's a PUD across the street here, AR2A, and then this is commercial attraction, which is Opryland.
That's commercial, right? I'm sorry.
We hope so.
Well, I don't want to belabor the point. I think probably R15 is a better financial deal than RS, and I think probably that the council is going to have the say on this ultimately either way. So I'm not positive that this process resulting in an OR zoning is ever likely to get through that, but that's really not our call. So whatever, I'm not sure what I'll do on this, because it did seem like everyone was reasonably happy with the R15. But that again is not our planning decision. It's
Well, there's something to it, I guess, when you think about the flood implications. I mean, you're right, building up higher is a safer alternative. Immediately adjacent is.
If you're going to build.
If you're going to build at all. Immediately adjacent is commercial. The commercial PUD, is that built out as commercial?
Yes, the councilman, I guess.
Directly adjacent to this property? Across the street? No, the commercial PUD adjacent is a parking lot?
Yeah,
A boat
it's-
ramp.
Yeah, there's not a building, it's a parking lot.
So there's no higher density on that side of the road?
If I might, just as you all are thinking about what motion you want to make, just don't forget, you need to make a determination as to whether the current PUD is, as it exists now, is consistent with the goals, policies, and objectives of the general plan and any applicable specific redevelopment, historic neighborhood, or community plans adopted by Metro. So you have to actually make another finding. You can do that in the same motion where you recommend a change to the zoning. But you need to definitively in the record say whether this current PUD is consistent.
Even if we've declared it inactive?
Correct.
Right, and just when you're making the motion for whichever zoning y'all decide to recommend at the beginning, just say that we find that the current PUD is not in keeping with our current policies, land use policies, and therefore we recommend.
That's the basis for your motion.
Yeah, the current policy is conservation.
Conservation.
Oh.
And that's why the staff recommended
Madam Chairperson,
difference.
Yes,
could
Commissioner.
we have the staff show us what's what on that map once again, what the zoning is and what the uses are?
So the property in question is here. These are residential lots to the north here, R15. The property here in question, of course, is OR20 base zoning with the PUD overlay. There's a commercial PUD here.
Which is what? That's the
Boat ramp and parking lot. R15 to the south here. CA, which is commercial attraction, and this is part of the Opry land complex, Opry Mills, et cetera, here. AR2A here, which is agricultural residential 2-acre minimum lot size, and then residential here, which is commercial PUD.
One question, staff, the, next to the CA, the Opry land that's R15, is any of that built out, or is that just zoned? Where your area is now?
It looks like those are mostly vacant. There's a, hold on, I've got a land use, oh, no, that's.
Well, the council member just indicated that they are vacant.
They are vacant?
Yes, sir.
Well, if I still have the floor, the more I look at it, the more I think about it, the more it seems like we should recommend rezoning to what the majority of undeveloped
Right.
land is right now,
I
which is
would-
R15.
I would agree with that.
I don't think I could be for that motion.
Any other discussion on this? Are we ready to take a vote?
What is the current motion?
The current motion is to, well, we
We've got, there's,
make a recommendation for the rezoning to revert to the base zoning of OR20 with this other language that we have to say.
Yeah, with the.
Nobody said it yet. I'm waiting on somebody to say
So,
it.
what I understand the motion to be is that the current PUD does not meet, is inconsistent with our current land use policies for the area, which is conservation, and therefore the appropriate zoning type is OR20 as the base zone is today.
That doesn't sound quite right.
I thought that's what.
I know, and that's the motion, but when you say it like that, it doesn't sound quite right. So that's our motion. Are we ready to take a vote on this one?
We got to have a second.
Oh, we had a second
Okay, sorry.
of the abbreviated version. Okay. All in favor?
aye.
Got two, let's see, show of hands. All in favor? 2 ayes. All opposed? So the opposed have it, nays have it. So we need a different motion.
I move that the recommended zoning be RS15 with, I mean, RS, that would be different. R15 with the language that Doug so eloquently read into the record a moment ago.
We find the PUD is inconsistent with our current land use policies, and which is conservation, and we think that the appropriate zoning, we recommend the appropriate zoning to be R15. Is that right?
That was it, yeah. I'm pretty sure that was it.
Second. Okay. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Show of hands, let me see again what's, oh, okay. So ayes have it. Motion.
I didn't want to agree with Commissioner Clifton twice.
Heresy.
Okay, so the next item is item 17. Is there anybody here that is still waiting to speak in opposition to this project, to this item?
Motion we put it back on
17.
consent.
Or just make a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve?
That was on, it was originally on consent, wasn't it?
Yes,
It was on consent, but it was pulled.
Oh, right.
that's correct.
Okay. So unless anybody is interested in the staff report and public hearing?
All the commissioners have been given a copy of the staff report. so-
Right.
So it was, 17 was pulled off by a citizen request?
But yeah.
Yes, sir, and they have left, apparently.
So the motion should be to
Would be to approve it.
reapprove it, period. Okay.
Yeah. Other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, director's report. Anything for you?
None other than go Titans, that's about all I have tonight. so.
And we are meeting again next Saturday, November 5th, correct? I think everybody has gotten their invitation. I know Kelly wants her orders. Looks like a very full agenda. Council Lady, any updates for you?
No, I think the big thing will be for the council to continue to talk about the telecommunications.
Okay. We don't have our parks representative or our historic representative. Commissioner McLean wanted us to remind where we're meeting for the retreat on the 5th, and that is at the Development Services Conference Room.
That's correct, it's just on the first floor of the Metro office building, just below our office.
Yeah.
Yes, it's where it was last year.
Great. And we'll start at 8 a.m. All right. I think we are adjourned.